In every dark corner of the world, there are places history tried to bury, places where the dead don't rest and the living don't stay for long. My name is Marcus Hale, and tonight I'm going to take you somewhere forbidden, an island Italy erased from maps, a place where the air tastes like ash and the walls remember every scream. This is not fiction, not folklore, and not a story I ever wanted to tell. But after 3 years as the last guardian of Italy's plague island, there are truths I can't stay silent about anymore. If you're new here, welcome to Mr. Darkness TV, where real horror lives in the spaces between fact and the things too terrifying to explain. Stay close, don't wander off. Tonight, we descend. I've spent more nights than I can count, wondering if I made the right choice stepping onto this island, this isolated patch of rock and ruin that the Italian ministry calls a heritage site, but locals whisper about like it's a gateway to someplace no living person should ever walk. But if you're listening to this, if you're hearing my voice right now, then I need you to understand something before we go any further. I didn't come here looking for ghosts. I didn't come here chasing legends. I came here because I was running from a past I couldn't fix, from a mistake that cost me more than my career, from a silence inside me that felt heavier than any haunting ever could. My name is Dr. Marcus Hale, and I am, at least for now, the last guardian of Italy's plague island. And these are the terrifying secrets I discovered here. If you've ever been alone, truly alone, the kind of alone where even your heartbeat feels too loud, you know there's a moment when the quiet becomes a living thing, a presence, a pressure, something that sits with you even when you don't invite it in. My moment came on the third night here. I was finishing my nightly rounds, documenting the damage inside the administrative wing, when the air temperature dropped so suddenly the breath froze in front of my face. No wind, no open windows, no logical explanation. And that's when I heard it. A voice, soft, almost careful, floating down the hallway behind me. "Marcus!" I spun around so fast my flashlight smacked against the wall. Nothing, empty corridor, just peeling paint and broken tile. But the voice had been unmistakably real. Unmistakably human and unmistakably close. I didn't respond. Instinct? Maybe. Maybe something deeper. Maybe the part of me that had spent years treating trauma patients understood fear better than logic ever could. But I remember the way it sounded, like someone trying my name on their tongue for the first time. Like it wasn't calling to me, but trying to learn me. That was the moment I realized the rumors weren't just stories, and it was the moment I stopped pretending this job would be anything close to normal. Before we go any deeper, before we get to the parts that still make my hands shake, you need to understand what kind of person volunteers to be the sole guardian of a plague island, with a reputation so dark fishermen won't cast nets within half a mile of its shore. You need to understand why I came. I wasn't always this man, the one patching broken windows and cataloging 200-year-old patient restraints in a forgotten hospital. Back in the States, I was a trauma physician, good at what I did, too good maybe, good enough to think skill could make up for judgment. But one night in Baltimore, a night I still see every time I close my eyes, I made a decision that cost someone their life. I'll spare you the details for now. Maybe someday I'll talk about it, maybe not. But that moment became the fault line that cracked everything I thought I was. They took my license. My colleagues stopped calling. People I loved couldn't even look at me. So when the ministry offered this position, guardian of Historical Preservation Site 41B, it felt like mercy or punishment. I wasn't sure which. Maybe I still don't know. But I do know this. Isolation felt easier than forgiveness, so I took the job, and I let the world forget me. The boat that brought me here felt too small for the weight I was carrying that day. The captain, a widowed fisherman named Renzo, who had agreed to make the crossing only once, refused to look directly at the island as we approached. He made the sign of the cross twice, then once more when he saw the tower of the old hospital emerge from the fog. "Don't stay there," he warned. "People who stay on that island, they don't come back the same." I told him I wasn't planning to come back at all. He didn't laugh. He just stared at me with eyes that knew sorrow better than faith. And when we reached the dock, splintered, rotting, half swallowed by the sea, Renzo shoved off as if the island itself might reach out and grab him. The silence that followed was absolute, crushing, an entire world made of quiet. The hospital rose in front of me like a broken cathedral, 4 stories tall, ribs of scaffolding sticking out like exposed bones, windows blacker than abandoned tombs. Birds circled overhead but never landed. Grass grew in unnatural spirals, and something in the air smelled like rust and memory. I told myself it was just the past lingering, but even then, something inside me whispered that the past here never truly stayed in the past. Every guardian before me left something behind. That's what they told me during my onboarding briefing, just a 5-minute conversation with 2 ministry officials who never once met my eyes. But no one told me what Elias Venn left. His room, my room now, still carried the shape of his life. His clothes still hung in the wardrobe. His boots still sat by the door. A coffee cup on the desk held the hardened remains of something black and bitter. It was as if he'd stepped out for just a moment and forgotten to return. But it was the dust that struck me, the thick layer covering everything except the footprint-shaped patterns on the floor. His footprints, not mine, dozens of them, leading from the bed to the door, never returning. I remember feeling a wave of dread wash through me, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. It just arrives. Something inside me whispered, he didn't leave. He fled. And he didn't flee alone. That was the first night I slept with the door locked. But even then, I didn't know the half of what Elias left behind. Not until I found the letter. It was tucked into the bottom drawer of Elias's desk, sealed in brittle paper that cracked at the edges. My name wasn't on it, just 4 words, for the next guardian. My throat tightened, a message for the one foolish enough, or desperate enough, to take his place. Inside, the paper trembled between my fingers as if it remembered fear. The letter was short. Terrifyingly short. If you're reading this, the island has already noticed you. It will test you long before you realize what those tests are. Do not trust what you hear. Do not follow what you see. Do not answer when it calls your name. And whatever you do not go near the reflections. Elias V. I reread that final line more times than I can count. Do not go near the reflections. And for a while, I listened, but not long enough. On my 7th day, I began documenting the eastern corridor, long, narrow, lined with patient rooms that looked identical after a while. But there was something about that corridor, something wrong with the air, heavier, like breathing through damp wool. It wasn't until dusk that I noticed the first anomaly. As I passed an old observation glass, metallic, scratched, barely reflective, I saw a door at the end of the hall that shouldn't exist. Room 19. There was no room 19 on the map. There was no room 19 in physical space, but in the reflection, it stood tall and unmistakable. A door with a frosted glass window, a brass handle polished as if touched recently, a faint glow behind it, like candlelight breathing. I turned to look directly. Nothing but a blank wall, unbroken concrete. When I looked back at the reflection, the door remained. And that's when something else appeared, a shadow under the door. A pair of feet, standing still, waiting. I felt something sink inside my chest, fear mixing with fascination, the same cocktail that had pulled me into medicine years ago. The unknown had always been my weakness. I reached towards the glass without meaning to, but before my fingers touched it, the shadow moved, slowly, deliberately, turning toward me through a door that didn't exist. I stumbled backward, crashing into the opposite wall. My radio crackled in my pocket like it was trying to speak for me. I should have run, I know that now, but curiosity has teeth, and that night it sunk them deep. Over the next 2 weeks, the island began to unravel in layers, like an old bandage being peeled back to reveal a wound still festering underneath. Doors opened on their own. Wheelchairs rolled without any slope to assist them. Ceiling lights flickered in patterns I eventually realized were Morse code, spelling out numbers I wouldn't understand until much later. But the worst was the voice. Every night, just past 1 a.m., I heard it in the north corridor. "Marcus, where are you?" Not a whisper, not a moan, a question, asked like someone genuinely searching for me. There was no anger in it, no threat. That's what made it horrifying. Fear is simple, but yearning, that reaches deeper. Every instinct in my body told me to respond, to reassure whoever or whatever that was wandering the dark halls. Loneliness has claws, the kind that catch you when you're tired or grieving or simply too human. But Elias's warning echoed louder, "Do not answer when it calls your name." So I didn't. Not then, not for a long time, but the voice grew bolder, more persistent, more familiar. And one night, it didn't just call my name, it said something else. "He didn't leave. You know that, don't you?" My skin went cold. It wasn't just calling for me, it was referencing Elias. Someone or something wanted me to follow. For a moment, I need to pull away from the fear, because fear wasn't the only thing I felt during those early weeks. There were glimpses of something else too. Hope, growth, clarity. Strange, right? Hope on a plague island, but solitude can be healing in unexpected ways. During the mornings, before the shadows grew too long, I found peace in the quiet. I rebuilt beams, repaired old hinges, tended the overgrown courtyard, painted rusted doors. Small acts of restoration that made me feel like I was stitching together something broken in myself too. Every day I survived here felt like a step toward forgiving myself. And every time the ocean breeze hit my face, I remembered why I came. To learn how to breathe again, to learn how to live again. But peace never lasts long in a place that feeds on unfinished stories. And this island had plenty. It was the footprint that shattered the peace. A single print, small enough to belong to a child, pressed into the dust outside the radiology wing. Barefoot, perfectly formed, fresh. No children live on this island. No tourists step foot on it. No boats come here except the monthly supply boat, and that was still weeks away. I knelt beside it, my heart kicking in my ribs like it wanted out. Then I noticed something else. A trail leading toward the surgical theater, a place Elias had circled in red ink on his map, a place he'd labeled in "Do Not Enter Alone." But I did. because some mistakes you're destined to repeat. Inside one of the locked cabinets, rusted shut, paper thin from age, I found a leather-bound book wrapped in cloth. Elias's journal, thick, heavy, stained by water or tears. The entries started clinical, maintenance reports, supply lists, weather notes. But as the pages progressed, the writing changed. His pen dug deeper into the paper. Letters grew erratic, lines broke, margins filled with warnings. And then I found the page that made my chest freeze. 3 rules, written not in ink, but in something darker, something almost brown-black. The rules I've now memorized more deeply than my own heartbeat. 1. Do not enter the hidden room after dusk. 2. Do not acknowledge voices that call your name. 3. Burn sage in the central courtyard at midnight every night. Underneath, in shaky handwriting, if you break even one of these, you'll hear them. If you break 2, they'll find you. Break all 3, and they'll remember what they lost. I didn't understand the last line, not yet, but I was about to, because the island was done waiting. It was near midnight when I stepped into the central courtyard carrying Elias's journal. The moon barely touched the cracked stones. Fog crawled across the grass like something waking from sleep. And then the voice returned, not soft, not hesitant. This time it was urgent. Marcus, don't go. I froze, because that wasn't the unknown voice from the hallway. That was my sister's voice, Emily, the one person whose forgiveness I'd never earned, the one voice I would have given anything to hear in my darkest moments. But she was 5,000 miles away, safe, unreachable from this cursed rock. Marcus, please don't leave me again. My throat tightened. Pain is the easiest doorway, and the island knew exactly where mine was. For 1 second, a single fragile second, I stepped toward the sound, and that's when I saw it. Behind the far wall of the courtyard, reflected in a broken shard of window glass. Room 19, the door wide open, a hand gripping the frame, a shadow stepping forward. I blinked, looked directly at the wall. Nothing. Looked back at the reflection. The figure was closer, reaching, stretching, wanting. That's when reality cracked. Because the shadow spoke, not in my sister's voice, not in the soft, pleading tone from before, but in a voice I recognized instantly, a voice I prayed I'd never hear again. Dr. Hale, you left me on that table. My knees almost gave out. My breath caught like it hit a wall. This wasn't the island mimicking. This wasn't an illusion. This was a memory, twisted into something that could walk and whisper and accuse, something that wanted me to follow it back into the past. When I finally tore my eyes away, my pulse was pounding so hard I thought I might collapse. But I didn't answer, didn't speak, didn't step closer. Elias's final warning rang in my mind like a bell. Once they know your guilt, they will not stop. I ran back to my quarters, trembling so violently I could barely turn the key in the lock. Outside, the voice kept calling, switching tones, switching identities. Emily, my mother, my patient, my own voice. Marcus, Marcus, Marcus. But I didn't answer. Not that night. I survived because I stayed silent. I spent the rest of the night surrounded by Elias's notes, trying to make sense of everything. Patterns emerged, dates, cycles, behaviors. The island wasn't random, it wasn't chaotic, it was deliberate. It wanted something specific. It wanted guardians, and it wanted those guardians to break. But there was something else too, something Elias never had the chance to explain. A final entry, half finished, ink smeared as if his hand had been shaking. There is a door beneath this island the ministry does not acknowledge. A door only a guardian can open, and once you open it, you cannot go back. The sentence cut off there, but I didn't need the rest, because I already knew one thing. Elias Venn never left this island, not truly, and soon I would learn exactly why. I've never been a superstitious person, not once in my life. Medicine trained me to believe in what I could measure, sterilize, suture, or sedate. But the night I saw room 19 appear in the reflection of broken glass, when nothing existed on the actual wall behind me, something in my worldview cracked. Reality didn't break all at once. It bent, tilted, shifted just enough that I could feel the weight of something old pressing from the other side. And part 2 of my story begins on the morning I realized the island wasn't just haunted, it was aware of me. I barely slept after the encounter in the courtyard. When I finally drifted off around dawn, the only thing that greeted me was a dream of footsteps pacing outside my door. Soft at first, then louder, heavier, as if multiple people were circling my room, whispering my name in different tones. When I opened my eyes, the room was bright with morning light, calm, safe. But the moment I sat up, I realized something was wrong. Someone had placed my portable inspection mirror, heavy stainless steel, directly across from my bed. I had not put it there. Its surface was angled perfectly so that the first thing I would see upon waking was that reflection of the eastern corridor and the place where room 19 appeared. My heart hammered hard in my chest. Each beat a warning. The island was playing with me. I walked toward the mirror slowly, like approaching an animal I didn't trust. At first, the corridor looked normal. Dust floating through beams of sun, peeling paint curling like scorched parchment. Then my eyes adjusted. The door was there, clear as daylight. Room 19, isolation ward, authorized medical staff, only black lettering carved into frosted glass, a brass handle polished by countless hands, and God help me, a faint silhouette standing behind the glass, as still as a statue, not moving, not shifting, just waiting. I closed my eyes and counted to 3. When I opened them again, the silhouette raised its hand, not fast, not threatening, slow, curious, like it wanted to match the rhythm of my breathing. I staggered back so hard I hit the dresser, sending a stack of Elias's papers scattering to the floor. That's when I knew. Room 19 wasn't appearing randomly. It was responding to me. I spent the next 3 hours digging through Elias Venn's journal, page after frantic page, ink blurring where water or sweat had soaked into the paper. His earliest entries were neat, organized, clear. But as the months went on, his writing loosened, bled, scribbled, words mashed together like he was too terrified to lift his pen. 3 entries stood out that morning. Entry Chapter 14, reflections no more than rooms do. It started as a faint outline, a door that didn't exist, then a handle, then a pulse of light behind the glass. I am no longer confident the walls of this hospital represent the boundaries of this place. Entry Chapter 31, the patients in the glass. They watch me through the reflections, not directly, never directly, only from the other side of silvered surfaces. I believe they are trapped there, but sometimes I feel like they want to trade places. Entry Chapter 56. Do not answer them. Last night, one of them used my brother's voice. I almost answered. That's when the door began to open. I froze. The journal recorded exactly what I had experienced. The voice mimicking someone I loved. The door inching open. the crushing sense that something was practicing me, studying me, learning what buttons to press. I turned the page. The next entry was a single sentence, shaky and crooked. If they learn your guilt, they will use it. I closed the journal slowly, a shiver crawling up my spine. The island wasn't guessing. It was dissecting me with precision, like I used to dissect wounded patients' symptoms. It wanted to know my weaknesses, and it had already found one. Around noon, the fog lifted enough that sunlight spilled across the northern courtyard, revealing patches of grass I hadn't seen in days. I thought the break in weather might help clear my mind, so I went out, clipboard in hand, to survey structural damage along the south wing. But the moment I reached the old pediatric ward, sunlight streaming through broken windows like golden threads, I caught something out of the corner of my eye, a shimmer in the reflection of a metal-framed window. I turned. Room 19. Even in the bright light of day, this time the frosted glass pulsed, soft waves of brightness, as though something inside the room breathed in beams of sunlight and exhaled them in steady rhythms. But it wasn't just the door. There was something else. A small figure sitting on a metal bed frame inside the reflection-only room. A child, feet dangling, shoulders slumped, hair long and matted. They slowly lifted their head, and though the glass was frosted, though the image was blurred and fogged and barely visible, I could make out the outline of their face. A young girl, maybe 8, maybe 10. And her head tilted just slightly, as if she had heard something, as if she sensed me. My breath hitched. She raised her hand, not reaching this time, waving, a small, hesitant wave. Then I heard her voice, soft, fragile, broken like a memory. Help me remember my name. I stumbled backwards so fast I tripped over a broken gurney. My elbow slammed into the wall, sending a bolt of pain up my arm. But when I looked back, the child was gone. Only the door remained. Still. Silent. Waiting. I carried my fear back to my quarters like a weight. For the rest of the afternoon, my mind raced. Was the child a memory, an echo, a trick, or was it reaching for me? I pulled out every map, diagram, and record I had found in Elias's room. Birth logs, death logs, notes from nurses no longer alive. Nothing mentioned a child's death in a room matching the position of Reflection Room 19. I went digging deeper, a stack of medical records archived in the basement storage room, yellowed, brittle, some eaten by moisture, contained a list of patients admitted between 1901 and 1914. But one file was different, newer, marked with a red slash across the front. Patient unknown, transferred without documentation, age 9/11, no name provided. The first page was blank except for a single line in faded pencil. She keeps forgetting her name. My hands trembled as I held the paper. The island wasn't just showing me ghosts. It was showing me someone unfinished, someone stuck between memory and oblivion, and she was calling for me. That night, I forced myself to eat. Pasta, canned tomatoes, nothing special. But routine helps keep fear at bay, even if only for a moment. By 11 p.m., I decided to inspect the eastern corridor again. Part of me hoped nothing would happen, that my mind had invented the child, the shadow, the voice. But when I reached the corridor, the temperature dropped so sharply the hallway exhaled a cloud of visible frost. And then I heard it, a soft tapping, tap, 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 like bare feet walking slowly across concrete. I raised my flashlight. The corridor was empty, but in the reflection on the polished metal strip along the wall, A figure walked slowly away from me, the silhouette of a man, tall, thin, dragging something behind him. I lowered the flashlight. The real corridor remained empty. I lifted it again. The silhouette stopped walking and turned toward me. Not in the real world, only in the reflection. He tilted his head, then lifted the object he was dragging. A length of chain. He rattled it once. The sound echoed across both worlds. I took a single step back. The reflection man stepped forward, only in the mirrored surface, but the corridor's air grew heavier, tighter, as if something invisible pressed closer. My breath vanished from my lungs. Elias's words screamed inside my head, "Do not go near the reflections." I turned away instantly and ran back toward the courtyard, refusing to look at anything polished, anything shiny, anything that could hold a reflection. Feet pounding against cracked tile, cold air slicing into my lungs, my heart hammering against bone. Behind me, I heard it again. Chain dragging, chain scraping, chain slithering over the floor, but only in the reflection world I refused to turn toward. By the time I slammed my door shut and locked every latch Elias had installed, my body was shaking uncontrollably. I collapsed into the chair, sweating despite the cold. Not from exertion, from recognition. The silhouette dragging the chain, I knew that shape, not the ghost, not the apparition, the posture, the gait, the slow, deliberate movements. He walked like a patient I'd had in my final year of residency, a man who had survived 3 surgeries after a violent incident, a man who couldn't speak, a man whose hands had been restrained with soft cuffs because he kept clawing at his own chest. I had stayed with him for 12 hours straight, monitoring him, trying to save him, trying to repair the internal bleeding I had misjudged. He died the next morning, and I never forgot the sound of the restraints falling slack when the nurse removed them from his cold wrists. Chains. The island had dug into the deepest vault of my memory, one even I rarely opened, and pulled out a silhouette of my guilt, and then it made it walk. At 2:17 a.m., the fog outside my window began to pulse, thickening and thinning in slow, rhythmic waves like breath. I watched it, frozen in place. The fog climbed the stone walls, slid across the window panes, wrapped itself around the building like a living creature embracing its prey. Then it settled on the glass, and words appeared, not written, formed, shaped, condensed from vapor. "You left him." My stomach twisted so violently I nearly doubled over. The fog pulsed again. New words formed. "Come to the door." I forced myself back from the window, but the next message stopped my breath. "She remembers you." The child, the girl in room 19. My hands trembled so violently I had to grip the desk to stay upright. The island knew my guilt, knew my past, knew every fracture line inside me, and now it had a new weapon, a child who needed me, or something pretending to be one. I didn't sleep again that night. Instead, I sat with Elias's journal, analyzing every entry that mentioned reflections or children or the unnatural fog. Just after dawn, I finally worked up the courage to investigate the medical wing again. Sunlight poured through shattered windows. Shadows retreated to corners like they were afraid of the day. For a moment, the silence felt peaceful, but the deeper I walked into the ward, the more the air changed, thickening with the metallic tang of antiseptic and something older. Rotting wood, old blood. Then I noticed something strange. The hospital bed frames were moved, not by the wind, not by time, rearranged, pushed into a semicircle, all facing the far wall. The wall where, in the reflection, room 19 would be, as if the beds themselves were watching or waiting. I stepped closer. That's when I saw it. On the concrete floor, a small handprint, fresh, made by a child, and beside it, another handprint, larger, jagged, pressed too deep into the dust for a human to make so cleanly. My throat closed. Not alone. She wasn't alone in that room. Something else was with her. I turned slowly, scanning the room. Sunlight cut across shards of glass. Dust floated in glittering spirals. Everything was still. Then, tap, a soft sound behind me. I spun around. The reflection in a metal cart showed the door again. Room 19. The silhouette of the child stood behind the frosted glass, but this time, another shape loomed behind her. A tall form, hunched, shoulders sharp enough to cut through the haze. Its hand rested gently on the child's shoulder. The glass fogged from behind. Breaths. 2 sets. Uneven. Mismatched. Then another voice spoke. Not hers. Not mine. Not human. A low, rattling whisper that scraped against the back of my skull. She remembers what you forgot. Then the girl pressed her hands to the frosted glass. She spoke again, trembling. Help me, before he teaches me your name. I stumbled backward, hitting the cot behind me so hard the metal frame shrieked. The reflection darkened. The tall figure straightened, unfolded, grew, and placed its other hand against the door. The frosted glass bulged outward slightly, as if something inside was pushing, testing, learning how far reality would stretch. I dropped my flashlight. It clattered to the floor, the beam rolling across the walls. When I picked it up again, the reflection was gone. The door, the child, the tall figure, gone. But on the real wall in front of me, on the solid concrete that should never have changed, a single line was scratched into the surface, crude, ugly, fresh. Come back after dark. When I returned to my quarters, sweat soaked my shirt despite the icy air. My heartbeat felt like a drum inside my skull. I locked the door, shut the blinds, and tried to breathe. Elias's rules echoed in my mind, especially the second one. Do not acknowledge voices from empty rooms. But I had, twice. Once by stepping toward the courtyard voice. Once by responding to the child in my thoughts, even silently. And the journal was explicit. Break 2 rules. They will find you. The tall figure behind the girl, it had noticed me, studied me, chosen me. I reread every page in Elias's journal until a new realization hit me. The rules weren't just warnings, they were conditions, boundaries the island followed, not out of kindness, but out of structure. This place wasn't chaotic, it was systematic, a hospital for the dead. And I had just broken its admission policies. As evening bled across the horizon, the hospital shadows grew long and hungry again. Fog gathered early, thicker than usual, clinging to the walls like cobwebs carved from breath. I stood at my window, Elias's journal in one hand, a flare in the other. I knew what was coming. I could feel it in the air, a tightness, a pressure, a sense of anticipation. The island was waiting for me. And when the first star appeared in the sky, I heard the child's voice again, faint, far, cold. Doctor, it's dark now. Then the tall figure's voice followed, a whisper that slid beneath my skin. Come see what you left unfinished. The door handle behind me rattled, slow, steady. I didn't turn. I didn't breathe. Then tap, 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 knuckles rapping on the wood. 3 knocks, measured, human in rhythm, inhuman in tone. Then silence. I waited and waited until the voice returned, this time inches from the keyhole. We know your name. The temperature dropped so suddenly, I saw frost creep across the inside of my windows, and I understood. I had broken two of Elias's rules. I had been seen, heard, targeted. And the third rule, the one about burning sage at midnight, suddenly wasn't superstition anymore. It was survival. At 11:54 p.m., I gathered the sage bundles Elias had left behind. My hands shook so violently the dried leaves crumbled onto the floor. I grabbed my lighter, my boots, my flashlight, and as the clock flipped to 11:58, I heard the handle of room 19 click from somewhere deep within the hospital, even though room 19 had no latch, no hinges, no real existence in the physical world. The click echoed through the corridors like a gunshot. The tall figure had opened the door, not fully, but enough. I rushed out of my room, the sage trembling in my grip. The fog in the hallway parted around me, but only because something was moving through it from behind, disturbing the air in long, silent strides. I didn't look back. I reached the courtyard at exactly midnight. My lighter sparked, the sage ignited, and the moment the white smoke touched the air, I heard dozens of footsteps retreat at once. But the tall figure didn't. Instead, its voice drifted from the corridor. "Sage will not stop what you already opened." The smoke swirled violently, pulling toward the eastern hall as if trying to block something enormous. And for the first time, I realized the island hadn't just awakened. It had become hungry. The smoke thickened until it obscured the entire courtyard. My eyes watered, my lungs burned. But then, in the dense haze, a reflection formed. Not in glass, not in metal, in the smoke itself. Room 19, the frosted door, the child, her palms pressed against the glass, her eyes wide with terror. She whispered one final thing, the thing that rooted me to the spot and made my blood turn to ice. "If you don't help me tonight, he will learn my name too." And just like that, the smoke dissolved. The courtyard emptied. The cold wind returned, and I stood alone. With one certainty, whatever waited inside that reflective room, whatever he was no longer content staying behind the glass. The door was opening, and soon I would have to choose, face what was behind that door, or let the island decide for me. I used to think the worst thing about fear was the way it steals your breath. But I learned something different on that island, something more unsettling. Fear doesn't just take from you, it gives things too. It gives you visions. It gives you memories you thought you buried. And if you're not careful, it gives you reasons to walk straight into the darkness you've spent your whole life avoiding. Because sometimes fear whispers, "If you don't face me now, I'll wait for you later." And on Poveglia, later always comes sooner than you think. Just seconds after the child's pleading face dissolved in the sage smoke, the fog in the eastern corridor thickened, so dense I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. I stood in the courtyard gripping the sage bundle, my breath quivering in my chest. Something was happening inside the hospital. Something the island had been building toward for weeks. Room 19 wasn't content to stay in the reflection anymore. It wanted out. The air vibrated, low, steady, like a deep bass note played just beneath hearing. My flashlight flickered. The ground beneath my boots trembled, and a sharp clicking sound echoed from the eastern hall. One click, then another, then a long, slow creaking, the sound of a hinge straining, a door opening, a door that shouldn't exist. My vision blurred for a moment, not from fear, but from the overwhelming instinct pulling at my gut. Move, now, before the thing behind that door sees you first. I didn't want to go toward it. Every part of me screamed to run back to my quarters and barricade the door with every piece of furniture I owned. But the child's voice lingered in my mind. Her trembling whisper, "Help me before he teaches me your name." And something about that, something about the fear in her tone, felt too human to ignore. I took one step toward the eastern corridor, then another, then a third. The fog swallowed me whole. By the time I reached the eastern wing, visibility was nearly zero. The thick fog hugged the corridor so tightly, I could feel its cold moisture settle on my skin. But the sound was what made me stop. Soft breathing, not mine, slow, measured, deep, the kind of breathing a person makes when standing very close in the dark. I raised my flashlight, the beam cutting a pale line through the gray. Nothing. I swept the beam left. Nothing. Right. Nothing. Then I tilted the beam down. The breath caught in my throat. There were footprints on the dusty floor. Small ones, child-sized, leading toward the wall where room 19 should be, but beside them a second set, larger, wider, pressed deep into the dust, as if something heavy had walked alongside her. The child was real. The tall figure was real, or at least real enough. My pulse raced. My fingertips tingled like electricity ran through them. I lifted the flashlight toward the wall, and for the first time, room 19's door was physically there, not in reflection, not in a mirror, not in glass. On the wall, solid, wooden, green paint peeling at the edges, frosted glass glowing with faint interior light. I froze. This was the moment every rule warned me about. Every instinct inside me screamed to turn around, run, escape, but something heavier, an obligation, a familiar weight from long ago, anchored my feet to the floor. I spent years listening for patients who needed help. It was instinctual, reflexive. The call for help, however small, however faint, still reached the part of me that believed I could fix what was broken. And that little girl, she sounded so broken. I reached out. My hand hesitated inches from the door handle, and that's when I heard it, a whisper barely audible from inside the room. "He's coming." My pulse hammered hard. I twisted the handle. The door opened. The light inside room 19 wasn't electric. It pulsed like candlelight, warm in color, cold in temperature. The air was thick, heavy, suffocating, like stepping into a basement that had been sealed for a century. The room was larger than it looked in the reflection. Too large, too deep, as if it extended beyond the physical boundaries of the hospital. And in the center of the room sat the child, knees pulled to her chest, bare feet dangling off the rusted bed frame, long dark hair covering part of her face. She lifted her head. Her eyes, wide, impossibly dark, met mine. "Help me," she whispered. A wave of emotion slammed through my chest so suddenly it staggered me. Fear, but also something else. Recognition. She didn't look like anyone I knew, not exactly, but grief can make strangers look familiar. "Who are you?" I asked softly. Her lips trembled. "I don't remember my name." I stepped closer, and then the temperature dropped so suddenly my breath misted in the air. The girl shuddered. Her gaze darted toward the darkest corner of the room. "He's here." The shadows moved, slowly, deliberately, like a man unfolding himself from a cramped space. I raised my flashlight. The beam hit the far wall, then stopped as if swallowed. Then something stepped into the beam. He was tall, taller than any adult I'd ever treated. His limbs were impossibly long, bending at angles that weren't anatomically correct. Skin gray and stretched tight over bone. Head tilted at a sharp, unnatural angle. And his face, God help me. His face was covered by a cracked leather medical mask, the kind plague doctors wore centuries ago. But instead of round glass eyepieces, his eyes were two deep black voids seeping threads of dark vapor. In one hand he held a length of medical chain, old, rusted, links worn thin by time, the same chain I'd seen in the reflection earlier. The tall figure stepped forward. The floorboards groaned under his weight. A low, rumbling sound, like distant thunder, reverberated through the room. I moved in front of the child instinctively, shielding her. The figure tilted its head the other direction, a slow, cracking motion that sent a jolt through my spine. Then it spoke, not with a voice, not with breath, but with a vibration so deep it felt like my bones were ringing. "Dr. Hale." The sound nearly dropped me to my knees. My flashlight flickered. The room warped, stretching, bending, trembling. I held my ground. "Stay back," I choked out. The creature stepped closer. I raised the sage bundle, still smoldering from earlier. White smoke drifted upward. The tall figure recoiled slightly, as if uncomfortable, not hurt, not threatened, just irritated. He raised his chain, and the chain began to move on its own, sliding across the floor like a sentient snake. The girl grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my sleeve. "He wants you," she whispered. "He needs a doctor." My blood went cold. This thing, this impossible figure carrying medical tools and instruments, wasn't just a ghost. He was something worse. Something formed of pain, memory, decay, and medicine twisted beyond recognition. He was a spectral patient who never healed, never left, never forgot. A patient who had been waiting for a doctor for over 100 years. A patient who didn't understand that he had died. The tall figure stepped forward again, the room shaking with each movement. Frost formed along the walls. Dark cracks spread across the ceiling. The bed frame rattled violently. The child whimpered, pulling herself closer to me. "Please," she begged, "don't let him take me." The tall figure extended a long skeletal hand toward me. Not the girl. Me. He wanted me. The patient who died under my care back in Baltimore, the one I never forgave myself for, flashed through my mind. His pale blue lips, the alarms going silent, the way I whispered I was sorry over and over, long after he could no longer hear me. Was this just another echo of guilt, or something manipulating that guilt? I didn't have time to figure it out. The tall figure slammed his hand down, cracking the concrete floor in half. The room shuddered, lights flickered violently. The girl screamed, "Run!" I grabbed her wrist and bolted toward the door. The tall figure roared, a sound so guttural it shook the walls. Black tendrils of smoke burst from his eye sockets, filling the room with shadows that clung to my skin like icy fingers. We reached the doorway, and a blast of force slammed into my back. I crashed into the hallway, rolling hard across the floor. The girl tumbled beside me. I scrambled to my feet. The door to room 19 was still open. The tall figure was coming. I grabbed the girl, hauled her up, and sprinted down the corridor behind us. The doorframe splintered as something massive forced its way out. The lights overhead flickered in rapid succession. The air thinned to the point my lungs burned. Dust and debris rained from the ceiling as the building's ancient structure groaned under supernatural pressure. We ran through a maze of hallways, past empty beds, overturned carts, broken monitors. The girl's small hand stayed locked in mine. Behind us, the footsteps drew closer, slow, heavy, unwavering, a predator that didn't need to run. At one point, I glanced back. and saw the tall figure's silhouette turn the corner. Its elongated shadow stretched across the entire wall, reaching for us like claws. "Keep moving," I gasped, pulling the girl faster. We reached the stairwell, and the door slammed shut before us without a single hand touching it. The girl gasped. I pulled the handle desperately. Locked. Then the tall figure's voice reverberated through the metal door. "Doctor, your patients await." A dozen whispering voices echoed behind his, layered, overlapping, sickeningly familiar. "Help us, Dr. Hale. You left me. Finish what you started." My chest tightened. My breathing stuttered. This wasn't just haunting. This was accusation. I turned away from the locked stairwell, searching for another escape route. That's when I saw it. A metal door I had never noticed before, half hidden behind a toppled cabinet, old, rusted, marked with faded lettering, "Sub-level access, authorized personnel only." The girl tugged my arm urgently. "Go," she whispered. "He can't follow us down there." Her fear sounded genuine, but something about her voice shifted, almost too insistent, almost rehearsed. Still, the tall figure's footsteps pounded closer, each one vibrating through the floor. I threw my shoulder against the metal door. It groaned, resisted. I hit it again. The frame cracked again. The hinges snapped free. The door crashed inward onto a staircase, leading down into thick darkness. The girl yanked me hard. "There!" I grabbed my flashlight, aimed it down. The beam illuminated a concrete stairwell descending into a sub-level I never knew existed. I turned back for one last glance. The tall figure rounded the corner, his void black eyes locked on mine. He raised his chain. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the girl and plunged into the darkness. The sub-level air was colder than ice. The flashlight beam cut through the dark, illuminating stair after stair. So many it felt like we were descending into the center of the earth. After what felt like minutes, we reached the bottom. The hallway stretched long and narrow, lined with doors labeled in peeling paint. Archive room, cold storage morgue. Experimental theater isolation ward. B. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just a basement. This was another hospital beneath the hospital, a hidden layer, a forgotten level. The girl's grip tightened. "He never comes down here," she whispered. My breathing slowed. "Who is he?" I asked softly. Her eyes flicked upward. "The one in the mask, the one who wants you." She swallowed hard. "He calls himself the patient who remains." A chill crawled up my back. "Why does he want me?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Because you're the only doctor who survived long enough." My blood ran cold. Survived? How many came before me? The girl's voice cracked. "All of them." She led me deeper into the sub-level, past broken lights, past rusted pipes dripping with condensation, past locked doors that felt wrong, as if something behind them was listening. We stopped at a heavy metal door marked Isolation Theater, Archive sealed. The girl pushed it gently. It creaked open. Inside was a cavernous room with rows of metal shelves, stacked with boxes, manuals, medical logs, tapes. Dust covered everything like snow. In the center of the room stood something that made my stomach drop, a medical examination table. Old. Leather straps cracked, metal restraints rusted, still holding shape. Someone had been strapped here once, maybe more than once. The girl walked to a shelf and picked up a faded manila file. "Elias left these for you," she whispered. My heart jolted. "For me? Why?" "Because he knew you would come here. He knew you'd need the truth." I stepped closer. The file had a name scribbled across the front. Guardian Failure Protocol. Hands trembling, I opened it. The first page contained only one sentence. If the guardian cannot maintain the boundaries, the dead will walk like the living. My breath caught. I flipped the page. Drawings, sketches, diagrams, all depicting the same figure, tall, elongated, mask of the old plague doctors, the patient who remains. Underneath one drawing, a note in Elias's handwriting. He is what happens when a guardian loses himself to guilt. The room tilted, the air thinned, my chest tightened. "No," I whispered. The girl watched me silently. I flipped another page. Journal entries, Elias admitting he was losing control, losing sleep, losing reality. He wrote, "He visits my dreams now. He says he remembers my mistakes. He says he knows the pain I can't forget. Is he part of me or am I part of him?" Another entry. "I'm afraid to close my eyes. He gets closer every time." The final page trembled in my hands. It was a death log. Elias Venn. Status, deceased cause, not recoverable body, not retrieved. The girl whispered, "He didn't leave. He became him." I staggered backward. No, that can't be true." The girl lowered her eyes. "He broke all 3 rules." A faraway sound echoed through the sublevel. A single, heavy footstep. Then another, then the dragging of a chain. The girl's eyes went wide with terror. "He's coming!" My pulse shot upward. I grabbed her hand. "Is there another exit?" She shook her head violently. "No, we shouldn't have come here. He smells fear, and you're afraid." I swallowed. "What do we do?" She looked up at me with trembling lips. "We hide." She pulled me behind one of the metal shelves. We crouched low as the room fell silent. For a moment, the only sound was my own frantic breathing. Then, footsteps. Slow, heavy, growing closer. A shadow passed across the room as something massive stepped into the archive. The girl squeezed my hand so tightly, my fingers went numb. The tall figure moved between the shelves, the chain sliding against the concrete floor. He stopped less than 10 feet from us. Then he lifted his head. He inhaled, a deep, rattling sound like lungs full of water, and whispered, "Dr. Hale, you belong below." The flashlight in my pocket flickered uncontrollably. Dust drifted down from the ceiling. The girl's whole body shook. The tall figure stepped closer, 5 feet away. 3, 2. Suddenly, a loud metallic bang echoed down the hallway. The tall figure turned instantly, jerking unnaturally toward the sound. Then he vanished into the corridor. The girl exhaled so hard she nearly collapsed. But I knew one thing with certainty now. He could find us anywhere, and the island wasn't done testing me. When the footsteps faded, the girl pulled me toward the far wall of the archive room. "There's something else you need to see." She reached into a hidden notch in the wall and pulled out a second file, much older than the first. The front read, "Guardian Selection Criteria." Inside were photographs, notes, names of people who had served as guardians before Elias, dozens of them, all with similar traits, isolated, grieving, carrying guilt, running from something. Then the girl handed me a final page, handwriting unfamiliar, but the message was clear. The island chooses guardians who already believe they deserve punishment. My hands trembled. The girl spoke softly. "The island didn't trap you, it called you," I swallowed. "Why me?" She hesitated. "Because you're the only one who hasn't broken yet." A distant bell tolled, not from above, from deep within the sublevel, a low, resonant sound. I recognized it instantly. The bell of the plague ship, the same bell that rose from the water during the fog siege. The girl grabbed my sleeve. "He's bringing them," she whispered. I stared down the dark hallway, dread coiling in my stomach. "Bringing who?" The girl's voice cracked as she answered, "The dead who remember your name." My knees went weak. The tall figure's voice echoed through the sublevel, vibrating through stone and bone. "Dr. Hale, your rounds begin." The bell tolled again, louder, closer. Shadows rippled like water along the walls. Dozens of shapes emerged from the far end of the corridor. Figures wrapped in burial shrouds, faces hollow, eyes black and dripping, bodies swaying in unnatural rhythm. They advanced slowly, purposefully, not wandering, not lost, marching, as if answering a summons. The girl clutched my hand. "Run," she whispered. And for the first time since arriving on the island, I realized I wasn't just fighting ghosts. I was fighting a system, a hierarchy, and the patient who remains, the creature wearing the plague doctor's mask, wasn't the end of it. He was only the beginning. I always believed courage was loud. A pounding heart, a raised voice, a desperate push forward. But descending further beneath Poveglia, surrounded by the dead who remembered my name, I learned that courage is often silent, quiet, measured, built from the decision to put one foot in front of the other when every instinct begs you to stop. And that night, as the plague ship's bell tolled through the forgotten sublevel and the dead advanced in synchronized formation, my courage was whisper thin, barely holding, but still holding. The girl, small, trembling, barefoot, yanked my hand. "They're coming from above and below," she whispered. "We have to go sideways, through the tunnels." "Tunnels?" I asked, already moving. "Yes, they're older than the hospital. Older than everything built on top of it." Her voice shook, not from fear of the dead behind us, but from fear of the place ahead. But we had no choice. The hallway behind us filled with silhouettes. Shrouded figures limping forward, heads lolling unnaturally, arms reaching in slow, deliberate arcs. Not chaotic like zombies in movies. These moved with purpose, discipline, like soldiers marching to the beat of a long-forgotten drum. The bell tolled again. Louder this time, closer. I ran faster, lungs burning as we sprinted through the sublevel's maze. Cobwebs brushed my face, pipes rattled like teeth chattering. The girl pointed to a small metal hatch in the wall, rusted, barely big enough for a grown adult to squeeze through. "In there," she urged. I knelt and ripped the hatch open. The smell that poured out was a mix of ancient dust, sea rot, and something metallic. Old blood. I swallowed hard. "Go!" She slipped inside effortlessly. I followed, dragging the hatch closed behind us just as the hallway shook with the force of dozens of footsteps. The tunnel was barely 3 feet high, claustrophobic, dark, the air thick enough to chew. My shoulders scraped the sides as we crawled. Ahead, the girl's pale silhouette guided by instinct rather than vision. Behind us, the tall figure's voice reverberated through the walls, muffled but unmistakable. "Dr. Hale, you belong below." I clenched my teeth and kept crawling. The tunnel sloped downward, colder with each foot. My breath fogged the air. Moisture dripped from the stone ceiling in rhythmic taps. After what felt like an hour, but was probably 10 minutes, the tunnel widened, allowing us to crouch. The girl wiped dust from her face, her small chest heaving. "He can't fit in the crawl space," she whispered, "but he can wait. He always waits." Her voice cracked. I steadied her gently. "What's your name?" She froze, then whispered, "I don't know. He won't let me remember." The tunnel opened suddenly into a chamber lit by small lanterns made of bone and glass, light flickering like trapped fireflies. It was too organized to be abandoned, too warm to be empty. Footsteps approached from the far side. I instinctively stepped in front of the girl. Three figures emerged: a middle-aged man in a tattered priest's collar, a woman in a nurse's uniform, hair tied back tightly, a broad-shouldered groundskeeper with hands like carved stone, but their faces human, alive, warm. "Easy," the priest said, raising his hands in a calming gesture. "You're safe here, or safer." My jaw loosened in disbelief. You're alive?" "Very much so," the nurse said, "though we came close to not being." The groundskeeper stepped forward. "Welcome to Foundation Sanctum." The name hit me like a tidal wave. Sanctum, a safe haven, beneath a hellscape. The girl slipped behind me, clinging to my jacket. The priest noticed. "You found her?" he said softly. "She found me," I corrected, "and she's terrified." The woman knelt gently. "Sweetheart, do you remember anything yet? Even a little?" The girl shook her head, hugging herself tightly. The priest exhaled. "Then we have much to discuss." We were led into a circular chamber lined with carved stone murals, depicting centuries of figures standing watch over haunted Italian ruins. The priest, Father Corvin, gestured to the largest carving. "This," he said, "is what you are, a guardian." "I didn't choose that," I said. "No guardian ever does," the nurse replied gently. "But the island chooses with precision." The groundskeeper folded his arms. "It chooses people running from guilt, people who tried to save others and failed, people who still wake in the night hearing the voices of the ones they lost." My chest tightened. He wasn't wrong. Father Corvin stepped forward. "You aren't here as punishment. You're here because you can see what others can't, because the dead trust you to witness them." I laughed under my breath. "What? You expect me to help them?" "Yes," the nurse said softly. "And no." I frowned. Father Corvin explained, "You don't heal the dead. You keep them from crossing over into the living." The hair on my arms stood on end. "What happens if a guardian fails?" The groundskeeper pointed to another carving. It took me a moment to recognize the shape. Tall, elongated, mask with hollow eyes. The patient who remains. My stomach dropped. "That thing used to be a guardian?" Father Corvin nodded. "He was once a man named Elias Venn." My heart froze. Elias, the previous caretaker, the one who left the journal. "He broke all 3 rules," the nurse said. "The guilt consumed him, twisted him into a vessel for the dead." I stared at the carved depiction. "And I'm next." "No," Father Corvin said firmly. "Not if we teach you the sanctuary's countermeasures." The girl tugged my sleeve. Her voice was small, broken. "You can save me too, right?" I swallowed. "I'll try." The groundskeeper stepped forward. "You'll need more than trying. Hail." They led me to an ancient stone platform, round, cracked, carved with symbols older than Italy itself. "This," Father Corvin said, "is called the anchor. It binds a guardian to reality. It prevents the dead from warping you with guilt." I hesitated. "What do I have to do?" The nurse placed her hand over mine. "Tell the truth. Every truth you've avoided. Every guilt you've buried." My breath hitched. "I can't." The groundskeeper's voice softened. "You must, or the island will do it for you." I stepped onto the platform. The air around me tightened. Like stepping into the center of a storm. The lanterns flickered, shadows twisted. Then my pulse slowed, my vision blurred, and I heard my own voice whisper, "I couldn't save him." The truth I never said out loud. Father Corvin nodded. "Keep going." My throat trembled. I made the wrong call, and a patient died. Lights dimmed. The nurse whispered, That pain isn't punishment, it's proof you cared. I continued. I was scared. I hesitated, and he bled out. The air cracked, hot and cold simultaneously. Stone vibrated under my feet. And I ran, I confessed. I left everything, my career, my sister, my nephew who looked up to me. The platform glowed faintly. I told myself I came here for solitude, but the truth is, the girl stepped closer, her voice barely audible. You were hiding. Yes, I whispered, I was hiding. The ground shuddered. A blinding flash surged upward, light pouring from cracks beneath my feet. Then silence. The anchor dimmed. Father Corvin smiled softly. You've done it? My chest loosened. Breath poured back into my lungs. The girl hugged me tightly, small arms gripping with surprising strength. You didn't break. The nurse wiped tears from her eyes. You just became harder for the dead to control. Our moment of peace lasted exactly 6 seconds. Then the entire sanctum shook violently. Shelves toppled. Dust rained from the ceiling. Lanterns shattered. The priest's eyes widened. No, he shouldn't be able to enter sanctum. A booming voice, deafening and furious, echoed through the tunnels. Truth does not save you. You belong below, Dr. Hale. The tall figure stepped through the sanctum doorway. Chains dragging behind him, mask dripping darkness, shadows spiraling from his body like tendrils of smoke. The groundskeeper jumped in front of us. The anchor weakened him. How did he break through? The nurse grabbed the girl and pulled her behind a column. Father Corvin spread his arms wide. You can't enter this place. It's protected. The figure tilted its head, a grotesque, bone-cracking motion, and whispered, He opened the door. The boundary is broken. My stomach dropped. The room 19, by entering it, I had shattered one of the island's oldest barriers. The priest shouted, Hail, don't let him get inside your mind, but it was too late. The tall figure stepped closer, and suddenly the sanctum walls faded. I was alone. Back in an operating room, cold fluorescent lights pounding overhead, monitors beeping rapidly, blood pooling beneath a patient. A familiar voice screamed, You hesitated! You killed me! I stumbled backward. No, this isn't real! The tall figure appeared in the reflection of the surgical light. His voice crawled beneath my skin. I remember your hands. I remember your failure, I gasped, clutching my head. Then a small hand gripped mine. The girl, her voice pierced the illusion. Don't let him decide your story. I blinked. The vision shattered. We were back in the sanctum. Father Corvin stood between me and the tall figure, hands glowing with faint white light. The groundskeeper swung a lantern, scattering him briefly. The nurse hurled salt across the floor, tracing protective symbols. But the tall figure only laughed. A hollow, soul-scraping sound. He pointed at me. He will be mine. He lunged. Chains whipped through the air, straight toward me. The girl screamed. I grabbed her, shielding her as the chains snapped just inches from my face. A blast of white light exploded from the anchor beneath us. The tall figure staggered, snarled, then dissolved into smoke, slithering back into the tunnels. Father Corvin collapsed to his knees. The nurse breathed heavily. He'll come back, soon. I pulled the girl close. The priest spoke, voice shaky. He won't stop until he breaks you, Hale. I swallowed hard. How do I stop him? The groundskeeper looked at me with grim certainty. You can't stop him. He handed me a map etched into old parchment. But you can outrun him. The nurse pointed to the deepest part of the tunnels. To the heart of the island. Father Corvin nodded. If you want answers, real answers, That's where they are." The girl squeezed my hand. "Please take me with you. He wants me too." I looked around the sanctum, the only place on earth where living people still survived beneath a world of restless dead. And then I looked down at her, a child who had no name, who had lived more in fear than memory. I made a decision. "Come with me," I said softly. "I'm not losing you." She smiled weakly. Father Corvin placed a hand on my shoulder. "Godspeed, guardian. Every step you take from here on out, you take alone." I nodded. "No," I said quietly. "Not alone." I took the girl's hand. We stepped toward the tunnel leading deeper into the island, deeper than any guardian had gone in centuries. The nurse whispered to the priest, "He'll either save her or become the next one." The priest replied, "Everyone who walks into that tunnel becomes something. The question is what?" As the lantern light faded behind us, the girl tugged my sleeve. "Dr. Hale, are you scared?" I looked down at her and answered honestly, "Yes, but not enough to stop." Because somewhere ahead, beyond the darkness, beyond the tunnels, beyond the centuries of restless souls, waited the heart of Poveglia. And I knew with a certainty that chilled me that whatever created the patient who remains was waiting for me too. There's a moment, one everyone encounters at least once in their life, where you stand in a place so dark that you question whether you'll ever see light again. For some people, it's an unexpected loss. For others, a mistake they can't undo. For me, that moment arrived beneath an island built from ash, grief, and the memories of the dead. As the girl and I walked deeper into the tunnels toward what the sanctuary called the heart of Poveglia, I finally understood something I had been avoiding for years. Fear doesn't come from what you see. It comes from what you hide from yourself. And the island was done letting me hide. The further we descended, the less the space resembled anything human-made. The straight stone corridors gave way to natural caverns, their walls rippling like molten rock cooled centuries ago. Faint light seeped from veins of mineral embedded in the walls, pale, blue-white, bioluminescent, like the island itself was breathing. The girl's small hand stayed wrapped around mine. "Why does it glow?" I whispered. She shook her head. "It's not the stone, it's what's inside the stone." Her voice held an understanding she shouldn't have had for someone so young. "How long have you been down here?" I asked. She paused, then whispered, "I don't know. Time feels like it forgets me." My chest tightened. This child, whoever she had been before the island took her memory, had lived in fear for far too long. But something else gnawed at me, a question that refused to stay silent. "Why me?" I asked quietly. "What makes me different from the guardians who came before?" She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice shook. "Because you didn't run from me." Her words sank in like cold steel. I realized, without fully understanding why, that I would protect her with everything I had left, even here, even now, even if the island demanded something far darker from me. After an hour of walking, the tunnel widened into a cavern shaped like a rib cage, huge bone-like arches curving overhead, dripping condensation in slow, steady rhythm. We moved through the center of it. That's when the whispering began. At first, it sounded like wind brushing stone, soft, distant. Then the voices sharpened. "You let him die. You're supposed to save us. You ran. You always run." Dozens of voices, layered, human, broken, accusing. I recognized every one of them. The mother whose infant died before I could stop the bleeding. The elderly man whose stroke came too fast to reverse. The accident victim whose lungs collapsed despite every tube I placed. People I tried to save. People I failed. My breath hitched. The girl stepped in front of me, eyes fierce. Don't listen. These aren't the ones who want help. They're the ones who want your fear. I knelt, gripping her shoulders. Why do they want that? She swallowed. Because it feeds him. The patient who remains. The figure wearing the plague doctor's mask. Elias twisted into something monstrous. A wave of nausea rolled through me, but before I could speak, a blast of cold air rushed through the chamber. The lantern stones flickered. Shadows stretched toward us like claws. He's close, the girl whispered. We have to move, now. The cavern narrowed into a stone walkway that stretched across a massive pit. No railings, no supports, only a narrow bridge carved from what looked disturbingly like interlocking ribs. Below the bridge was nothing, just blackness, deep and endless. I tested the first step. The bridge groaned, like something alive shifting beneath my weight. The girl grabbed my sleeve. Don't stop. If you hesitate, the bridge feels it. Feels it? I echoed. She nodded. It's made from the bones of the first plague victims. They don't like fear. My knees locked for a moment. Hesitating meant falling. Falling meant never being found. So I moved. One slow step, then another, and another. Halfway across, a sound echoed behind us. Metal scraping stone, chains dragging. The girl stiffened. He found us. I turned. The tall figure stood at the cavern entrance, outlined in faint blue light. His plague mask dripped shadow. His chains writhed like serpents eager to strike. He stepped onto the bridge. Keep going, the girl whispered, but the creature didn't rush. He didn't have to. He walked in steady, deliberate steps, unbothered by the shifting bones, unafraid of the depths below. His voice rolled across the cavern. The dead are waiting, Dr. Hale. They remember you. I clenched my jaw. No, I muttered. They remember my mistakes, not me. But the distinction didn't matter to him. He raised his hand. The bridge shook so violently I nearly fell. Bones cracked, dust rained from overhead. The girl shrieked, "Run!" We sprinted the final steps. As the creature reached out, a chain whipped forward, just missing my back by inches, and slammed into the bone walkway. The bridge shattered behind us. The creature roared, an inhuman, guttural sound that rattled the cavern. But he wasn't done. Not even close. We reached a rounded chamber glowing with golden light cast by hundreds of flickering candles lodged in crevices of the rock. In the center lay a stone altar, cracked, ancient, covered in carvings of hands reaching upward. The girl tugged me toward it. This is where your truth becomes power. I frowned. What truth? I already faced it in the sanctum. She shook her head. No, that was your guilt. Now you have to face your fear. I stepped toward the altar, hesitant. What am I afraid of? Her voice softened. Becoming him. A cold wave crashed through my chest. She wasn't wrong. Somewhere inside, I knew the truth I hadn't dared to speak. Elias didn't become the patient who remains because he was weak. He became it because he gave up hope, and hope, more than anything, was what the island fed on. The girl guided my hand to the altar. Close your eyes, she whispered, and listen. I did. At first, silence. Then, slowly, the chamber filled with the heartbeat of the island. Not metaphorically, literally. A slow, deep thud pulsed through the stone, through my bones, through my lungs. The girl's voice faded. Something else rose, a memory I hadn't touched since the night everything went wrong. The operating room lights, the smell of antiseptic, my gloved hands trembling as blood pooled around them, and the patient, the one whose death destroyed my career and my confidence. He looked up at me, eyes dimming, mouth trying to form words he never managed to speak. But here, in this chamber, he finished them. "I don't blame you." My eyes snapped open. The heartbeat stopped. Silence crashed over the room. The girl's face was soft. "It wasn't your fault," she whispered. My throat tightened. I could barely speak. How did you know?" She hugged me gently. "Because I hear the things you try not to think." She stepped back. "And he hears them too." A voice thundered behind us. "Enough!" The tall figure stepped into the chamber. His presence extinguished half the candles instantly. But this time, I didn't step back. Something in me had shifted, something the island hadn't expected. The creature advanced slowly, chains dragging behind like metal serpents. The girl moved behind me, gripping my coat. His voice echoed, "You cannot escape what you are." "No," I said quietly, "I can't." He paused. I continued, "But I can choose what I become." The chamber vibrated violently. Stone cracked, candles shattered. The creature raised his chain to strike. I stepped forward, not away, forward. "I'm not your replacement," I said, "and I'm not your successor." His mask tilted. Confusion rippled through the air. "I'm the one who breaks the cycle." The creature roared, a sound that shook dust from the ceiling. He charged. I grabbed the girl and pulled her aside as the chain smashed into the altar, sending stone fragments flying. "You want me?" I shouted. "Come and take me!" The creature lunged again. This time I didn't dodge. I stepped into the attack, grabbing the chain with both hands. Cold shot up my arms like liquid nitrogen, but I didn't let go. I met the creature's hollow gaze and forced the words out. "You're not a monster. You're Elias." He froze. The chain loosened. The shadows around him recoiled as if touched by flame. I pressed harder. "You didn't become this because you were evil. You became it because you were alone." The creature staggered, clutching his head. The chamber dimmed. I kept going. "You were scared. You were overwhelmed. And you thought no one cared enough to pull you back." The creature trembled. Black liquid dripped from his mask. The girl stepped beside me. Her voice was tiny. "Elias, we're here now." The entire chamber went still, silent, then shaking, not from anger, from something else, something deeper, grief. The creature's knees buckled, his chains clattered to the ground. His voice cracked, not monstrous, not booming, human. "Forgive me." And for the first time, I saw Elias behind the mask, broken, lost, afraid. The figure collapsed, but the island wasn't ready to let him go. The floor split open. Shadows poured out like a tsunami. A violent scream tore from Elias as the darkness pulled at him, trying to reclaim him. The girl clung to my side. "You have to decide," she whispered. "Save him or save yourself." My heart pounded. I couldn't save everyone, I knew that. But this was my chance to save one. I lunged forward, grabbing Elias's arm. The shadows clawed at us, tearing at my sleeves, raking ice across my skin. My muscles burned, my vision blurred, but I held on. "Come back," I shouted. "You're not alone anymore." The darkness surged upward, trying to devour him, trying to devour me. The girl screamed, "Dr. Hale, let go, it's too strong." "No," I roared. "If I let go, he's gone forever." I pulled with everything I had left, all the strength I'd buried, all the guilt I'd carried, all the courage I thought I'd lost. Something snapped, not bone, not chain, a tether, a spiritual cord. The shadows shrieked, their collective scream shaking the chamber, and then silence. Smoke dissipated, the ground sealed. Elias lay on the floor, human again, exhausted, alive. The girl gasped, You saved him!" I collapsed beside him, breath tearing from my chest. "No," I whispered, "he saved himself. I just reminded him he could." It took hours for Elias to wake. When he finally stirred, his voice was a rasp. "Thank you." The girl hugged him fiercely. He wept, arms trembling as he held her. She looked up at him. "Do you remember my name?" He nodded. "Yes. You were my patient. You died in my care. I forgot your name because I couldn't bear to remember it." My throat tightened. "What is it?" I asked softly. He whispered, "Lucia." The girl, Lucia, smiled through tears. "I remember now." The chamber glowed brighter for a moment, like the island exhaled. Elias stood on shaking legs. "You two need to leave. The island is resetting. It will seal these tunnels soon." I helped Lucia up. "How do we get out?" Elias pointed to the wall. An opening appeared. Stairs carved from fresh stone leading upward. "The island opens paths for those who break its cycle," he said. I turned. "What about you?" He smiled faintly. "I stay, but not as the patient who remains, as a guardian again." Lucia hugged him tightly. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're not alone anymore." He nodded. "And neither are you." It took nearly an hour to climb the ascending tunnels. When we finally saw daylight, warm, golden daylight, every part of me shook with relief. Lucia smiled, face glowing in the sun. "It feels warm," she whispered. I forgot what warm felt like. We reached the main courtyard. The fog was gone. The air was clear. The shadows were normal. No voices whispered from the walls. No silhouettes moved in reflections. The island was at peace. For the first time in centuries, a small boat waited at the dock, untouched, clean, and fully fueled. An offering, a choice. Lucia stepped inside first. I followed. As I untied the rope, she looked up at me. "What happens now?" I stared at the island, its silent buildings, its calm water, its long history finally exhaling. "Now," I said softly, "we live." We reached the mainland at dawn. The authorities questioned us. Lucia was taken in for care, food, warmth, psychological support. They assumed she'd survived some tragic accident. I didn't argue. 2 weeks later, Elias's journal arrived in the mail. No return address, no note, just a final line written in new ink on the back page. "You broke the cycle. The dead are at rest. Protect the living now." Lucia stayed with a foster family she quickly bonded with. She chose her own name, a full one this time. Lucia Hale. She told me she liked matching last names because family can be chosen. And me, I returned to medicine, slowly, carefully, with humility, but with purpose. I no longer ran from my past. I used it, because somewhere beneath that island, in tunnels the world will never see, a man named Elias guards the boundary between the living and the dead. And he doesn't guard it alone. He guards it with hope, the same hope that saved him and saved me. And if I ever hear the bell of that plague ship again, I'll know something. Not fear, not dread, but a calling. Because after everything that happened on Poveglia, I finally understand what it means to be a guardian, a protector of the forgotten, a witness to the truth, and someone who believes that even the darkest places can still hold light.